Thanks for watching Cosmic Cousins Soul-Centered Astrology. I am your host, Jeff Hinshaw. Cosmic Cousins is a visual astrology podcast dedicated to making astrology accessible through embodied health, self-discovery, and ritual immersion. Cosmic Cousins is made possible by the generosity of our Patreon supporters. If you'd like to deepen your studies, visit cosmiccousins.com for workshop downloads and other offerings. Thanks as always for tuning in. Hey Cosmic Cousins, happy November to you. Happy Day of the Dead, Samhain, Halloween, whatever it is that you do to celebrate this time of year. I'm wishing you November blessings. And today we have a really special podcast episode. We're looking at the transits for November of 2021 with another astrologer, and a friend of mine, Taylor Ursula, who also goes by That's So Pisces. They're a double Pisces Capricorn rising, so we'll get into that in a moment. But before we do that, I did just want to check in, and I have a few little updates and announcements. And so the first thing is, one of the main astrological signatures for 2021 is Saturn in Aquarius square Uranus and Taurus. And so this is a theme for us as we continue through into November and December, and the tension is building as we approach this third and final square this November and December. And so you may experience as energies in and around and within you. And so some of the questions that I have for you just to consider as we go into November is, in what ways has 2021 pushed you to grow and love with groundbreaking tenacity? How are you practicing radical commitment and discipline within yourself and with others? How have you held both your rebelliousness and your responsibility together? And so this has been a push-pull struggle around these themes throughout this year. And so as we head into November, there is this opportunity for us to let go of any outworn, stagnant parts of ourselves while breaking through in a more radically embodied way. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because for some of you, this radical commitment may look like you taking your astrology practice to a whole new level in the most holistic of ways. And if so, I'm excited to softly announce that I have a powerful new offering in the works for 2022, the first ever deep dive Cosmic Cousins leadership and teacher training. It's still brewing for now. I'm receiving what the curriculum is going to look like and how it's going to unfold. But for now, I wanted to bring it out there to you. So for those of you who might be interested, but more information will be coming out towards the end of November, and on what to expect and how to work with me in the most deeply intimate ways yet. And so if you'd like to stay informed, please sign up for my newsletter. There is a link in the show notes, and I'm wishing for you a transformative November. Some other announcements that I have before we go in. Again, this is now on YouTube as well. So if you're listening to the podcast, you can subscribe on YouTube and watch this as a visual presentation. And that's really exciting for me and also for the Cosmic Cousins team, because right now we are trying to reach 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Once we reach 1,000 subscribers, we'll start going live on YouTube every week. We don't have the time that it's going to be. I think it might be Wednesday nights at like 8 p.m. Pacific time. I don't know yet. We have to reach 1,000 subscribers. So if that's a way you would like to connect and build a community with the Cosmic Cousins, come join us and subscribe to us on YouTube. And I also have openings for astrology readings and tarot readings. This is a great time of year for tarot. I love offering tarot readings during Scorpio season. But if you are looking for support right now, I do have openings for both deep dive astrology and tarot readings. You can go to cosmiccousins.com to find out more. And last but not least, I also have a 4-part workshop download series that I'm releasing on the asteroids, Awaken the Cosmic Healers in your chart. So if you'd like to dive deep into the asteroids this fall, you could also check that offering out. And yeah, so that's all I have for you now. You can probably tell I have a Scorpio midheaven. This is my very public time of year, so I have a lot of offerings out at this moment in time and ways for us to connect with each other. And as always, it's an honor for me to be here with you in this way. And at this time, we'll transition into our podcast episode for November 2021 transits. So, hey Cosmic Cousins, this is our November 2021 transits, and I'm really excited today because we have another astrologer here with us today, and we have Taylor Ursula of That's So Pisces here with us on Cosmic Cousins. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. It is a huge pleasure, and I'm very excited to talk to you about November.
Yeah, me too. It's one of those months that I think a lot of astrologers have been kind of already telling people, wait till November 2021, things are picking up. And so we're going to get into that today. I think a lot of that is because of Mars, coming into this cardinal cross with Saturn and Uranus. So yeah, I'm excited to hear how you're feeling into it, and also just excited to connect with you. So I'd love to start out by talking a little bit about you and your life and your offerings. I've got your chart here too, so we might pull that up. So I think a great place to start there is that you are a Pisces sun, Pisces moon, Capricorn rising.
Sure am.
And we were going to meet for Pisces season earlier this year, and then something happened. I don't know, but now we're here in Scorpio season. And yeah, so what does it feel like for you to be coming into Scorpio season as a double Pisces?
Oh, I mean, it's funny you mentioned that we were going to meet earlier this year, and even that November 2021 advice kind of worked out for us too. Just be like, hold on, you'll get there. You're going to hang out. It's gonna happen. I always love Scorpio season. As a super Pisces, things start to feel like they flow again. Libra season's my midheaven, and I can't see it. So it's just this, it's always this kind of stressful time. And this one in particular was quite a doozy with the Mercury retrograde and Mars being up there. So entering Scorpio season, entering November, I am certainly feeling a sensation of things starting to move. There is a little bit of apprehension of what is starting to move, but something, and that does certainly feel refreshing in a bit of a way. Also a little bit curious. I'm very curious to see what we're moving into, especially with the Uranian influence. So
yeah, and I'm feeling a bit of the mystery of Scorpio and what you're saying, because there's always that. It's like, I don't know what's about to move, but something's moving. So, but something that's been moving for you is you do have a really cool new offering that, I mean, it really speaks to a lot of people I know that are creatives and healers, and it's called The Hearth. I'd like to share an image of it here too. The Hearth. Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about this image and about this offering and why you're inspired to be tending to the flame? I think is something that I saw in your bio too, which is, it's very Vesta, and you have Vesta at the bottom of your chart here. So here's your chart. We've got Vesta and Aries right down at the IC. And I think the IC we often overlook, which makes sense because it's down there at the bottom of the chart, but really this is a place where we come home to ourselves. I often think of the IC as kind of like a undercover, like second moon sign, so you've got this like Aries, Vesta, moon-like energy down here too. So yeah, so I'd love to hear about the Hearth.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the stuff I have been thinking about this year has come from sort of my own astrological journey, which I know is true for many of us. And so last year when I came home to LA, Mars stationed retrograde on my IC, and it was as I was moving home from across the country. And so that point became very highlighted for me at that time. I don't have any other areas in my chart. And so that's always been this mysterious source of fierceness or anger, where I am a 4-sign Pisces. So I'm like, what is this feeling? And so understanding that Vesta there kind of came through my earlier work this year, which was about exploring the IC, tuning into this mysterious angle that we often overlook. And I completely agree, Jeff, that we tend to look at the other angles to see where we're going and what we're supposed to be doing and who we're going to be with. But we often overlook that initial sort of connection to source and that astrological umbilical cord, as I've been calling it. And so through that journey, through that project, I started, of course, looking really closely at my own IC and understanding my Vesta and how important it was for me to pay attention to that energy and how I hadn't really been honoring that in that way. And that was around the time that I started also recognizing, as you said, really everyone around us and us, all of us are experiencing burnout at this time. And so I was certainly experiencing that cycle and really realizing that I need to be able to come back to myself. There's no way that I can keep doing all of the things that we are all trying to do out here without coming back to the self in that way. And so I began practicing that for myself. I have this sort of very like Vesta room. I really made my space as much of a temple as I could to make my downtime as comfortable as possible, because I think we're all pushing and we're all kind of workaholics and we don't really have a choice. So if I'm not going to take the time to rest, then at least my environment is going to encourage me to utilize some of my downtime tools, my tarot cards. And I have this sort of like little table desk behind me where I like to read my cards. And I have this little kind of altar space over here. So it really it started first as I need to have a better experience in my work life and space. How can I push myself to do that? And from there, I started coming up with tarot spreads. I started coming up with how we might lean into tuning into this space when we feel this burnout coming, basically. Because that's really my own issue, and again, an issue that we see a lot of our community struggling with. So once I got really clear on, you need to pay attention to this, you're not going to move forward until you get this down, it became clear that it might be helpful to offer some of this to other people who also not only find themselves in cycles of burnout and have trouble setting aside time to rest, but are using tools with other people to help other people that they don't necessarily feel called to use for themselves or feel entitled to give themselves. And so it involves some tarot, it involves some reflection questions. And as I started thinking about the drop-in, that was the sort of initiation into this process. And then I recognized that once we stop and rest, we actually realize that there are many parts of our cycle, and we may not even be attuned to those if we're just constantly going. So the rest of the images of the hearth sort of fell into this Six of Pentacles sort of place of how can I create a structure that nurtures me enough to give back to others? Let's recognize that there are so many places in this cycle. And when I'm in burnout, I don't know if I'm beginning something. I don't know if I'm ending something. I don't know if I can end something. What if I'm too attached to this to see what might be beyond it? And so I really just wanted to create sort of a nurturing space that you could drop into to check in with yourself, and from there determine what kind of needs you might have, what sort of resources you might be able to tap into at any given part of your cycle. And from there, let's go into hypnosis, because hypnosis is where we can build worlds. So it absolutely comes down to this hypnosis component where we have ceremony. So everything that we uncover through the tarot spreads, through the workbooks, we're able to bring into hypnosis ceremony, and we're invited to acknowledge things that remain suppressed within us, and we can release grief, which is a natural part of our cycle, which is a natural part of life, and just start to clear more space for deeper rest moving forward.
Yeah. I feel your Pisces coming through so much in your offerings, because you're bringing together a lot of different intuitive practices and kind of like creating a nurturing space for us. And I love reflecting on your Vesta and Aries at the bottom of the chart, because it's so linked to the way you're holding space in the public, and often I see well. And again, this is on visual too. A lot of y'all be listening on audio, but no, we're on YouTube now, so you can check out the backdrop here, which is very, like, it reminds me of the two columns of the High Priestess, these two like curtains that you have, and knowing that you have the altar set up there too. Yeah, it feels very Vestal. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'll put a link to all of your info so that if anyone feels called to work with this, it feels super nurturing. And yeah, Thanks for sharing it. And yeah, let's get into the November transits too.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and share the screen. And I'll read over the overview of our major transits for November 2021. We have Mars in Scorpio from October 30th through December 13th. So this takes us beyond November, but it feels important to just note since Scorpio season is answering to Mars. It does feel cool. We were going to originally do Scorpio season transits, but we're doing November transits instead. And it's interesting that right when Mars is entering Scorpio, we are shifting gears and releasing this. November 3rd, Mercury clears its shadow. November 4th, Scorpio New Moon. And on that same day, the sun is opposite Uranus. And we shift right after the new moon on November 5th, Venus enters Capricorn and Mercury enters Scorpio. November 7th, Pallas stations direct and Pisces. November 10th, Mars squares Saturn. November 14th, Juno enters Capricorn. November 17th, Mars is opposite Uranus and Vesta enters Sagittarius. And then November 19th, we have our first eclipse in the sign of Taurus. It's the partial lunar eclipse in Taurus. And then we shifted into Sagittarius on November 21st, and then Mercury enters Sag on November 24th. So that is our overview for the month. We're going to get into it. And I think it's important to start with Mars and Scorpio, though. So let's start there.
Ooh.
Would you like to go? Yeah.
Yeah, what an interesting, I mean, and yeah, we were going to do Scorpio, but Mars is going to be in Scorpio for all of November. So that also feels very, we'll talk about November. Yeah, so you pointed out to me that this is the first time Mars has been in Scorpio in 2 years, and I hadn't thought about that. I was certainly thinking about the Mars station in Aries in September and how Mars recently was opposing that point from Libra as a part of these squares to Pluto and sort of wrapping up or bringing more to that story. And so it definitely feels like a bit of a relief to have Mars and Scorpio again, finally, to be out of that Libra space, to be out of those Pluto squares for now. Although entering into a square with Saturn is not going to be delightful, but those larger sort of power triggers, perhaps, or power pushes being through, I think we're now getting clear on what needs to happen next, or what is our next move after these squares.
Yeah. You're making me think of when Mars entered Taurus. It was in January of 2021. And there was a lot collectively happening at that time. Like right when Mars entered Taurus, it was when there was the attempted coup at the Capitol. So we're on the other side of the wheel of that. So it's almost like there could be similar themes that come up, or maybe since it's Scorpio, like secrets are revealed around those collective themes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But in our own personal life, and I like feeling this grounded Vesta energy that you bring for us, and like just feeling your backdrop in the altar. It's made me want to think about tarot, and I'm like thinking the Tower card is Mars. The Death card is Scorpio. So we could put these out as a meditation of how it's working in our own internal life too. And one way that I do that is I like, and my dog's growling, there's like things that, he was like sleeping here. So, Mars enters Scorpio, and there is that sort of like primal like growl going on. So, but I like to bring it into the body first and just kind of meditate on the body. And so,
bring it into the body.
It's okay, bud. It's okay.
He's tapping into his instincts.
It is. I just moved into a new apartment at the beginning of October, so there's new sounds and things going on. Yeah.
Lots of adjustments.
Lots of adjustments, and we all are. And it's interesting to like notice transits with an animal too, which is something that I've been doing. It's
real. My cat is getting up earlier. My cat is like trying to get us to get up and like let him outside and go talk to the birds. I'm like, no, I know that daylight saving is coming, but no, not yet. Not yet.
It's okay, Bish.
Yeah, those instincts. I like that. Rooting it in the
Mhm.
body. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The way I would root it into the body with Mars and Scorpio is like Mars can be irritation and flare-ups, and Scorpio is connected to the reproductive organs, the bladder, also the anus. So like thinking
Yeah.
of like Martian energy down here is just a way to kind of see how it might be manifesting in the world around us.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Yeah. And as you were describing that, I thought about the sacral bowl too in Reiki, and just that sort of instinctual, that reproductive creative energy just sort of being ignited at this time. Maybe asking
Yeah.
us to think about instinctually what our responses are going to be to the events that are unfolding this month.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, especially since Uranus is involved, and that's absolutely, or tends to be outside of our vision, outside of what we expect. And so how will we respond to perhaps things that feel threatening to our strategies or instincts, since Mars is really coming up against these outer planets right now? Yeah, instincts, reading in the body. What do we feel when we feel roused up in this way?
Yeah.
And what does that connect to emotionally for us?
And how might you tend to yourself? Like, for instance, like a UTI would be Mars and Scorpio, like in a very physical way. How would you take care of yourself in that instance? Actually, you're not going to be, so sexual, even though Mars and Scorpio we might think is sexual. You might have to actually give yourself a break, like drink extra water and like tend to yourself, rest, these sort of things I think are really practical things we can do with Mars and Scorpio, because it might be irritated around Scorpio in some sort of ways. That's one way. I always like to bring it to the body, but there's many other ways. And so I do always think with Mars and Scorpio, there's like, it's Scorpio has the little arrow, glyph, just like Mars. So there's a similar energy, and we know that Mars is the traditional ruler for Scorpio. And it can be a time where we're fiercely honing in on our desires, and we start digging deeper into our ambition and connecting in with our desire for transformation. And it's been a very productive time for me often when Mars is in Scorpio too, but also emotional. Yeah.
Yes, right. Yeah, absolutely. And it is interesting that they do go hand in hand, and that there does need to be some emotion connected to what we're experiencing. And can we connect with how far that emotion goes to truly understand the reach of our actions, perhaps, or the motivation behind our actions. And I like that you said productive, especially since Mercury's finally clearing its shadow. It's like we're finally coming out of this foggy place of answering to Venus. Venus is far ahead. Venus is preparing for its own retrograde almost at this point, and reaching that shadow place in November. And so what is Mercury going to be able to do outside of Venus's rule now, being free of retrograde shadow, and then soon to enter Scorpio, soon to be operating under the command of Mars? I think absolutely that says something about the potency that we'll be at least planning with at this time. And I love that you're saying, bringing in the analogy of the UTI, and like, that irritating energy. We may not want to act or react from what is initially being stirred up or being irritated. We may want to tend to it first. We may want to try to pacify it first, and then kind of understand more about it before it's just kind of lashing out into the world. Especially
what is the UTI revealing? Right. Many different things, and I know on like a spiritual level, a UTI can be like anger towards your sexual lover. It doesn't always have to be that, but there is like something deeper going on. And it does all, when we think of the death card for Scorpio, it is a slow card. It's like, if we're looking at the traditional Pamela Coleman Smith depiction, it's a skeleton, right? Like trotting in on a horse, not going very fast. And so Scorpio is a slow and sensual process. It can be. And
Absolutely.
Mars, like coming in, it is not as slow. So there is a little bit of tension, I feel, with Mars and Scorpio. And I've also, when we met when Mars was in Scorpio 2 years ago, we were talking about, and during that time period, I was actively working through grief, which is also a slow and sensual process too. And I remember I did a whole ritual. It was like 40 days that Mars was in Scorpio, and I bought 40 red roses. And I took one rose every day to the river, and I walked down the river, and I just walked with my grief, Mars and Scorpio, and I put the red rose at my ancestor tree in the Lower East Side. And then I walked back to my apartment in the East Village, and I did that every day. And it was just like part of my morning process. And so I think Mars and Scorpio can also be, really kind of giving yourself that space to really go in and feel everything that you need to feel. And so for some of us, if we're not connected, if something's dying, Mars and Scorpio might feel like a time for us to really go in there and let it go. For those of us that are creating something new, it might feel a little bit more productive or exciting and like, even sexual, who knows? But there's different ways that we might be experiencing it depending on what's going on in our life.
Yes, absolutely. I really love that visual of you walking with the rose. That's so beautiful. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I like what you said about Mars not necessarily wanting to slow down and do that reflection. And perhaps that's some of, we assume that Mars in Scorpio means good because it's in its own sign. And it's like, it can mean that it's accessing, or it's trying to access its own energy without doing the reflection that Scorpio is asking for. And so it's absolutely, I like that visual as another offering for this time. Like if you're feeling like Mars in Scorpio is stirring something up in you, and it feels like a time to be active with it or generative with it, and yet there is still something that needs your attention, perhaps offering something to this process or to this feeling, like this rose, can be a way of actively engaging with it and still feeling like you're sort of making progress, because we are a progress-centered culture. You can still feel like you're making progress towards something while allowing it the time to sort of unravel or unfold the way that it needs to.
Yeah.
That's such a lovely image. Oh my God.
I mean, Scorpio needs that Taurus beauty. So like the red rose and connecting to that. But if we're feeling too sluggish in that like grieving process, I also feel like remembering that Scorpio is fiery too. So it could, like, instead of walking by a river, maybe you're actually like building a fire.
Oh yeah.
And like spending time by the flame and letting that kind of transmute the energy, but also, being mindful of like not burning too much to the ground, because Mars and Scorpio might just want to destroy everything. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought about a safely contained fire, and like one that you reflect upon, but that not one that is necessarily to spread to amongst others. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And perhaps some of these sort of difficult transits for Mars this month are asking us to recognize where we may need to stay still, maybe where we are not quite at that place of the reveal or of the acting point, and doing a bit more of that reflection or that slowing down. And then perhaps Uranus is this catalyst into, okay, now. And perhaps it's really that 1 week in there that we're just kind of pacing ourselves and taking our time. And then once Uranus kind of bursts the floodgates open, perhaps that is, this big moment of reveal or of action.
I think so. And knowing that we're entering November waning, we're like waning into the Scorpio new moon. So Mars enters Scorpio and then Mercury clears its shadow. And so there might be openings for us, but also remembering maybe wait until the new moon or just after the new moon to like go completely forward.
Yeah. That new moon is a little intense. It's a bit intense. That moon is kind of, it's besieged by these two aspects.
Yeah, so we have, now we're shifting to the Scorpio new moon November 4th. And I think what you're speaking to is this new moon is opposite Uranus and Taurus.
Yeah, and I believe the moon squares Saturn right before it meets the sun as well. So it's sort of this like, it's kind of mimicking what Mars will go through over the course of the month, and perhaps I like that as a warning for the new moon. Like, okay, let's let the new moon happen. Let's see what arrives in this moon, because yes, both the luminaries will interact with Uranus on that day, and that's absolutely something to pay attention to, I think. Something to kind of like create space for, because we don't always know what it is that is arriving with Uranus. And so if we can create a little space and a little container to receive that, and to just kind of process it before running, before hitting the ground running, right? That sounds like a good idea.
The sun opposite Uranus, it's like, if we're just thinking of the sun as conscious awareness, it's the one time in the year where we like really have the conscious awareness of what needs to die, Scorpio, and be transformed in order to bring about some sort of radical change in our life, Uranus across the wheel. And I've been kind of like, just kind of like talking to friends and people around me. And one of my friends who is a Scorpio, she has been in New York City for like 15 years. And she all year has been talking about, I need to leave New York. I just like need to leave. But it hasn't happened yet. And we're kind of coming up to this point of the year where she needs to make a decision. And I think this can kind of get us into, we're kind of maybe going a little ahead because I want to bring in Saturn and Aquarius here too. But what's been going on in this person's life is that, they've been building community, Saturn and Aquarius, in New York. And really like that focus has been over the last year and a half of like building those structures, Saturn, to connect with others in their community. But they also have this desire to radically change their life, Uranus, and to be more connected to nature. To be like, New York City's not supporting anymore. I need something that feels more grounded. And I feel that with Uranus and Taurus.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, as we're on this new moon, it's sort of like this like pivot moment in November.
Yeah.
And it's taking us into Mars squaring Saturn, and then Mars opposite Uranus. So I'll use that story as a little example as we like continue forward. And then I can also share examples in my life, and I'd love to hear how you've been experiencing the square too.
Sure.
But so the new moon might reveal how these squares have been acting for us. So maybe do you have an example of how you've been experiencing the Saturn and Uranus square?
Sure. Yeah. It's fun because Uranus leading up to this was pinging my Mars last year and kind of the summer before. And so in my 5th house, it's been very much about, do you enjoy things? Do you know what you do for pleasure? What are the other things that you do that you enjoy that aren't just necessarily the work that you commit to? And as a Capricorn rising with like Neptune on the ascendant, I have been very much like, but work is the only thing that I identify with, or like work is the only thing I can show up for. So
Capricorn
Uranus,
rising?
Yeah. I'm like, I only know work, it's fine. So Uranus in Taurus for me, and like all over my Mars, has been pushing me to be very creative. So I've been making a lot of music, which I did a lot as a kid, but my parents wanted me to do as a career, and that ruined it for me. So I never did. And so it's been pushing a lot of creativity, and Saturn from the 2nd is also saying, and then how could you kind of make that make money though? Like, what about all these things that you thought were just for play? And what if you've never allowed yourself time to engage with them because they didn't feel serious enough to be monetizable? And what if instead you just kind of played around and see what happened and see what people respond to? So it is still a challenge I'm navigating, of course, because we are all still in the middle of these. But it's absolutely been pushing me to incorporate more of my creative side into my work. And I think that's coming through in things like the hearth, things where I'm really forcing myself to reveal sort of the creative practices that I tend to keep to myself, or that I tend to think won't be received well. My Mars is opposite Pluto, so it's it's very like, if I do this, everyone will hate me, so I'm just going to keep this to myself, or like someone's going to be mad, or like, you know, all of those power dynamics. So Uranus has very much been like, you need to stop thinking about that. Like, I don't care that that's what's happening, because this is your 5th house. So you need to be creating in a way that feels good to you. So.
And what's your music title? Do you have like, do you go by that? So Pisces? Or?
I don't. It's a Zephyr, which is like the god of the west wind, which I really like.
Yeah. I was listening to it this morning. It's so good. And then maybe we could drop in a song right here. We're at the Scorpio New Moon. This could give us like a pause. Do you feel open to that?
Sure, I brought it up, so it's fair game. It's fair game.
What song do you think would be a great pausing moment? Because the new moon is a time for us to all pause. So I think it would be appropriate for us to, you know, pause here and listen to some music. Is there a song that's coming to mind for the Scorpio New Moon?
You know, that's really funny. There's one that's like a quarantine dance party song that's like, I'm dancing in my room alone and I hope I don't lose my mind. But the If You Knew Me feels kind of very Scorpio, actually. It feels sort of like you thought that you knew me and we're not friends anymore, and it's pretty clear.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop that here now, and let's listen to this song.
Perfect.
Oh, 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 oh. Remember when you used to call me late night, school night, talking till the sunrise? Remember when you used to come by, high five, laugh about it till we both cried? You know, I think about you sometimes, even though it seems like many lifetimes ago. Remember when you said you love me, want me, haunt me? Well, isn't life just funny? If you knew me now, nothing we could talk about. Guess we're in a drought. Never thought I'd be without. If you knew me now, nothing we could talk about. We're down for the count, and I'll never figure out why. You should have told me you had met somebody, but you left me hanging. And even then, we still remain friends just because our bond was so deep. So many times we run the same lines that we ever done before me. And in the end, as we ran another bend, see you figure disappear in the rearview mirror. If you knew me now, nothing we could talk about. Guess we're in a drought. Never thought I'd be without. If you knew me now, nothing we could laugh about. We're down for the count, and I'll never figure out why. I didn't know we took different roads until I turned around and you're gone. If you get lonely, don't try to phone me, 'cause your ass is taking too long. If you knew me now, nothing we could talk about. Guess we're in a drought. Never thought I'd be without. If you knew me now, nothing we could laugh about. We're down for the count, and I'll never figure out why.
I'm gonna pull up your chart again. All break here at the Scorpio New Moon. You're double Pisces.
Yeah.
Music oozes from your soul, you know, and Mercury, Sun, Jupiter, Moon. I'm so interested in this too. And I think that this connects me to the nodal axis that we've been having, the North Node in Gemini. So Mercurial, the South Node in Sagittarius, so Jupiterian. And we are, you know, we're kind of, I just want to flow with you. I'm like, I got this structure here of the transits, but we're shifting the nodal axis from North Node in Gemini to North Node in Taurus. But the last year and a half, we have experienced Gemini Sag, and it feels so part of your chart in many ways. Like to have a Sun next to Mercury, so intellectual in many ways, but it's still Pisces.
Right.
But you have this Jupiterian moon that is not worried about the facts of Mercury.
That is so true.
Yeah.
It's a really good way to put that.
Yeah. But yes, it's so cool to know that you're also a musician too. And what an expression of your double Pisces. And, you know, when I think of double Pisces, I think of like Erykah Badu. I think of Kesha as a double Pisces, Sun Moon.
We share her birthday. She was born like a couple hours before me. So
no
we
way.
have
Yeah,
the
she's a
whole
Sag rising.
Sag rising, but we have all the same. I think about Kesha a lot.
Wow.
Like, go fight the good fight, Kesha. Got that Saturn in your first house.
Yeah, I didn't realize that she was the same year as us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I mean, wow, that song is really groovy. I'm gonna listen to your music now. I didn't know until I was kind of like going through your website and your Instagram today. It's kind of like hidden.
That. It is,
like,
and it is.
Yeah.
I'm actually in the process of writing a song currently. And it's been it's been like coming for me. Like half the song is in my mind and it's like, no, you remember the whole thing. Like, don't even pretend like you've forgotten any part of this. And it is kind of bringing this Scorpio moment into view of like, you've been hiding some things. And I imagine that's some of what my opposition to Uranus will be about is it's like you want to put yourself out here and yet you aren't necessarily telling everyone everything. So what else do you want to share with the class? And I think you're right. I think it's time to be less hidden.
Yes. And the Uranus of like me just being like suddenly as an Aquarius, I'm like, let's listen to your song.
Yes.
No
absolutely.
more hiding. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm excited for that and excited to see what comes of it for you. And, you know, on the Scorpio New Moon, it's cool that we're listening to this song. Scorpio does want to create. And so it could be a time where we are connecting to these practices that feed our soul and, you know, allow us to express our emotions. And music definitely does that for us. So
absolutely. And music is one of those, it's a free resource. We create it. It's not a thing that we have to have something high tech or fancy to be able to enjoy or to tap into our own musical powers. Like music lives within us. We all have a voice. We all have some limbs that can play some sounds, and tuning into that rudimentary nature of music, I think, can be part of that Uranus and Taurus feeling of, you know, because that's a lot of why I avoided it for so long. Is I was like, I don't know how to do this. I don't have the skills for this, or like, no one taught me. I don't know how to use this app or like this, you know. And Uranus was like, I really don't care that that's what's happening. Like, we're gonna figure it out. Like, you're just gonna sit here and push enough buttons until it happens. And then it did. And I was like, oh, that wasn't as scary as I thought. So recognizing that we all have tools, I think, in some innate way is a good call back to the body, kind of as you started us with. So
definitely. Cool. I think we'll continue to talk about some of these things as we continue forward, but right after the new moon and the sun opposite Uranus on November 5th, we have Venus enters Capricorn and then Mercury enters Scorpio, both on November 5th. So let's get into that. We both have Venus and Capricorn in our natal chart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what a lovely, I mean, Venus has been on quite a ride this year, I feel like.
Yeah.
And so to be entering Capricorn, and I mean, I think the shadow starts at 10 degrees. So not even getting very far in before preparing for this retrograde, which I feel Venus deserves a break. Venus has been leading Mars and the Sun and Mercury all while hanging out in Scorpio, kind of to its detriment, and then hanging out with the South Node, having maybe this kind of cathartic, like, okay, just I'm shedding some skins and I'm preparing for this overhaul in Capricorn. It's nice that Mars, or that Mercury rather, enters Scorpio on that same day and kind of frees Venus up from having to host, alleviating these hosting duties so that Venus can prepare for this like end of the year kind of molting or something.
I love the way you put that. Yeah.
It's, you know, it's Venus is like, it's been so nice. It's been great. Okay, everyone, bye-bye. Like at the end of Toy Story, bye-bye, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Am I gone? Is it over? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. Like now I can take off this mask and like unpack a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's nice for Mars to kind of be taking over the hosting duties a bit.
Right. So November 5th to
Yeah.
March 6th, 4 months of Venus in Capricorn.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And in that time, Mars does come meet Venus and they hang out for like a good chunk of that, I believe, through February into March, if I'm correct. Which is going to be very interesting too.
Yeah, Mars enters Capricorn kind of right at the start of Aquarius season, like January 25th.
Okay, yeah. So they will be hanging out for a bit, which is kind of nice. I feel like Venus does this sort of retreat and then Mars kind of comes to like escort Venus out. Like, okay, how you feeling? You feeling good?
Yeah. So what might Venus and Capricorn inspire in us? And particularly knowing that we'll be in this energy with the retrograde too, you know?
Right. It's interesting. I feel like, you know, Saturn entered Aquarius at the end of last year, and we haven't had a whole lot happening in Capricorn since the big conjunction and the weight of those 3 planets moving through at the same time. And so it's interesting that, you know, we kind of just had a Venus retrograde last year through Gemini, which set us up for kind of the pandemic and the way communication was going to change and how are we going to interact and learn and what is all of this. And it feels now at this time, at this point, mid-pandemic, post, whatever this time is, we're all calling it a little bit of a different thing, but we are absolutely reframing our attitudes about labor, about work, about how we're getting paid, about the structures that we operate within. And, you know, with Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto moving through there and the South Node all sort of starting to chip away at this structure, Venus is certainly coming through now and asking us how we talk about this structure, are we making money in this structure? The answer is no. So how are we communing to talk about this phenomenon that is happening? We have lots of strikes happening in real time right now. We have lots of memes going around about how much more employees could be paid at corporate companies, with those companies maintaining huge profits. So it seems that this is certainly partly to do with these conversations and how we're going to organize around them, what we're going to, who we're connecting with in these conversations. What do we value in this structure? What do we need to take from it moving forward that's worthy of keeping? You know, since this is sort of around the final square, the final Saturn-Uranus square too, that Venus is making this station. So what values do we need to carry onward with us, but what's ready to go? Like how can we on an individual level begin to kind of create resources for ourselves or identify resources that we need at this time as we're beginning this dismantling?
Yeah. And there's a sense too with all the Aquarian energy of 2021 and Capricorn being a collective earth sign. There is a team building that I feel with Capricorn, and Venus being the way we relate with people, that we don't have to do it alone. And thinking of Capricorn as a sign of our career, our public appearance, how are we teaming up with other people, other astrologers is what I'm thinking about, to make this more sustainable for all of us. And like when I think of Capricorn, I do feel that sense of coming together and sharing resources too. So it's something that I'm thinking about. And so Venus in Capricorn can also be uplifting other people in our community, allowing them a chance to be seen. And so, I take into consideration, particularly having Venus in Capricorn, of how am I highlighting other people too, and giving them a chance to speak. That's also my Aquarius, like being Aquarius sun with Venus in Capricorn, but this is a very Aquarian year too. So it does shift our focus towards the relationships that we're building in our offerings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love what you pointed out about the fact that we don't have to do it alone. And I think so much of this Aquarian time is the understanding that we need to do this together, and it's going to be successful if we do it together. And I feel it's potently significant that Venus is stationing pretty much on Pluto right before Pluto is coming in for its US Pluto return, which absolutely is all about how power separates us. Like power is used to destroy communities. I'm feeling this really strongly right now with like Instagram, which started off as a platform for connection and now as a platform for business. And now we are being pitted against each other when we were forging community, because it's dangerous for us to be in community. And so, yes, absolutely. How can we uplift each other? I think so much about Capricorn and the Cancer Capricorn axis as, what's good for me at home is also what others need. Let me create a system for nurturing. Let me create something that speaks to whatever family means to us and supports that in the world. How can we create resources for us as a society that are sustainable? And clearly Pluto has lessons for us about how very unsustainable what we have built is. And so I love that we do need to work together. Absolutely. And it is probably going to be through the communal efforts that we make that we are able to create the changes, there's not one change, but the many changes that are necessary, honestly, to even get us to a place where there is a future. Because what is happening to the world? And perhaps that's some of Venus in Capricorn retrograde as well.
I think so.
Recognizing the dire state that our tangible resources are in, or that our communal resources are in a dire state, whereas private resources are thriving. And so how do we start to talk about that? How do we start to build from here? What relationships are we forging to get this, to have each other's messages heard, and to, especially since again, our last Venus retrograde was in Gemini, which was a lot about like, oh, we're all connecting again on this level. Like it's you and me in the neighborhood. We are the authorities now. Like we know what's happening in our environment. And so how are we formalizing that now? What have we learned in this time? And like, what are we bringing together to forge a union? Ooh, maybe we're just creating a union. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, I'm here for it.
Astrologers union. There we go.
I'm here. I'm feeling the shift too with the nodes going into North Node in Taurus. And
absolutely,
there's a shift for me of how do I make this sustainable for myself? Yes. And it's interesting, Scorpio its model ruler is Pluto. And so Venus entering Capricorn, it's entering the sign that Pluto's in. And so it's happening during Scorpio season. And there is this shift for us towards really getting to know what Pluto and Capricorn has taught us, because we're in this third and final decan.
Yep.
As you said, we're going towards the United States Pluto return, which happens at the 27th degree of Capricorn. And so you can look to the 27th degree of Capricorn in your chart. I know you have Venus there, I have Juno there, to see what death and rebirth you're going through in your own life and how that is connected to the greater collective energy that we're moving through, if you find yourself living in the United States.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
If you're watching from somewhere else, wish us luck. We we can do this. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yes. And it is, Pluto's been in Capricorn for, it feels like a lifetime at this point, most of our lifetime.
Yeah.
And it is a very slow sort of unearthing, quite literally in Capricorn, of what's been buried underneath this system, right? And I think so much of that has to do with not only power, but like our health, our well-being. Like, how are we're not equipped to take care of ourselves. This is part of why we're here, is that we don't factor in things like mental health into our day-to-day conversations, or we are not equipped to, we don't have the resources to take care of ourselves and our bodies to be part of this broken system. And so it does feel absolutely, I love, astrology is not an accident. Yeah, Venus is stationing on Pluto for a very specific reason. And it's to bring perhaps, yeah, our collective awareness, as you said, to what Pluto's been trying to reveal to us. Absolutely. I love that. And
so practical things we can do to honor Venus and Capricorn, it is shifting our relationships, Venus, towards a practical long-term approach. And I know with Venus and Capricorn, I've learned to seek advice from elders around money, even if it's good for me actually to do that, even though I want to rebel against it sometimes too. And, shifting our values towards, as we were saying, sustainability.
Yeah.
And structures for not only us, but for other people too. And and maybe it's a time to commit in relationship too. Venus and Capricorn.
Definitely. I think that that's really true. And especially since we are still in this very strange time where perhaps the pandemic is beginning to wind down. Perhaps, we're starting to talk about, when does it enter the endemic stage? When is that? And
I just heard that term yesterday for the first time. It's like keeps coming up.
We're all just like being bombarded with the same sort of, but right. So like when is endemic? When is that? When do we start seeing this?
Well, this is Mercury entering Scorpio to me. I feel like it's
totally.
When is it gonna end?
Are you doing what you need to do? Are you protected? Can I go out now? Yeah. So I think it's, this time has created a lot of separation, I think, and divide in our relationships, which again, we kind of started seeing with Venus retrograde in Gemini as we all sort of took stances on what we thought was happening. And I think relationships have really deteriorated in this time to our own detriment. And we've been, again, in the digital realm, we're pitted against each other. People have things that we don't have, and we are sort of attacking each other because we can't really get to the higher ups. And in our day-to-day lives, we are more closed off from our communities or our neighborhoods. We're sort of skeptical of other people, or we don't trust each other right now. And I feel like Venus in Capricorn and that station may, as you said, about making commitments to relationships, really thinking about what is important to us. What are we able to commit to at this time? What are we able to kind of invest our energy in tangibly, since that's Capricorn? And I think about that so much as like gestures. I'm always like, here you go. Here you go. I can do that for you. As a natal Venus in Capricorn. But we're rebuilding, I think, wherever we are in this post, mid something pandemic time. We are absolutely rebuilding something in some capacity. And we do need to know who is with us in that and who we are rebuilding with, and kind of thinking about what what were we building for, moving forward, especially since we're talking about sustainability.
And it's, Capricorn is connecting to Saturn and Aquarius. And so
Right.
it is bringing that community aspect in, and how we were doing it together. And it takes time, anything in Capricorn takes time. And I think that's a good opportunity for me to check in with you and just see in your own personal life today, what kind of time restraints you might be on. Because we've been chatting for about an hour, and I just want to make sure that we can, do you have like 30 more minutes?
Yeah, I'm doing great.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
Yeah.
But Capricorn is gonna be like, oh yeah, because when it's an Aquarius and a Pisces hanging out, I could literally talk to you.
I know.
5 hours. We could just like go off into a portal. But Capricorn is reminding us of time. And
yes.
So just, also being patient with it as, we're moving through this time period of Venus being in Capricorn for 4 months. We are also going to be revisiting some of these themes, and it feels good though to be in an Earth sign, and there is a shift into Earth in 2022 as the node of fate is in Taurus, and I believe the Mercury retrograde shift from air into Earth next year. Okay. So there are more retrogrades in Earth, and it does feel like the invitation of next year is more about us this past year has been so social. Like, how do we communicate with each other? Right. This is how are we making money? How are we supporting ourselves financially? I feel that shift in my own life, like starting to happen. So, and then this, as we continue in with the transits, November 10th, we have Mars square Saturn. And so again, that is Mars in Scorpio, square Saturn in Aquarius on November 10th. So we've already been talking about Mars and Scorpio. We've talked about Saturn and Aquarius. And so there is a tension that's being created with this square aspect. I was talking about my friend who has been wanting to leave New York City, but which would be Mars and Scorpio, like the death to something, taking action around it, but the building community, Saturn and Aquarius. And so, which is something they've been focusing on the last few years, and quite responsibly so, Saturn. But I know around this date, like November 10th, there has been like this looming decision that's coming up of, am I going to make a decision to leave? And so either way, it's like, if they decide to leave New York City, they're killing Scorpio, their relationship to New York. It's like it ends, and there's like a grief. If they decide to stay in New York City, there's the grief of not having that freedom of being out in nature. So we're coming up against this tension. And to bring it back to the body, I think actually, Scorpio can be the anus. So we talked about UTIs, but I'm gonna bring it to the anus now. Mars and Scorpio could be like, I really have to like go number 2 right now. So it could be like diarrhea, essentially, Mars and Scorpio. And Saturn and Aquarius is like trying to hold it in and like keep it together. Or like there's like obstacles, it's like social distancing, so you can't find a bathroom. And like, so this square to me, Mars square Saturn, it's like, I'm literally about to shit my pants right now. Like, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because Scorpio is release. It's like something wants to be released, something wants to be, it's like detoxifying. And whatever Saturn and Aquarius has been teaching you, Mars and Scorpio is like, yeah, but like, I can't keep it together this long. Like I actually have to release this. So it's a pretty graphic, but Scorpio is graphic, and Scorpio is like us talking about the things that we wouldn't normally talk about, like at the dinner table, so and I think that metaphor was the best way. I feel that tension coming. I'm just like, I can't hold it in anymore. So I think what's important to note, like, even like with my friend, when I was talking to them, I was like, if there's a fear of losing what you've built around community because you want to leave and start a new life somewhere, our community networks are on the internet. You're still connected to people. And how Aquarian is this? And so things are getting more cerebral and ethereal, and the communities and connections you've made transcend the physical space that we dwell.
Yeah.
And it's us coming to terms with that as a new reality. Saturn reality of Saturn. It's the first Saturn return for the internet.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah. And here we are. And it's just
It
like,
is.
wow, the people that I trust the most are on the internet now. How you were talking about like not trusting like people in our, it's interesting.
Yeah.
And the networks that we're creating, Saturn and Aquarius, it doesn't have to be so intimate and personal, Scorpio.
Right.
There is that tension between it. So that's some of the things that I'm thinking about here. And so around November 10th, there might be that moment where you're like actually severing ties with something and, you know, or like directing your ambition towards something, but keeping in mind that what you've been building in Aquarius isn't going to die. Like there's still the structures there.
Right.
So that's some of what I'm thinking about, but there's so many other ways that we could look at that. So I'm curious how you might be feeling into it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I like getting graphic. My Pluto's trying my Mercury and Sun. So I'm like, let's do it. Let's get in there. We're like, wow, that was really intense. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, what? So I'm here for it. Yeah, no, that is, I really like what you just said. And it brought to mind kind of the Uranian element of it, which Uranus and Taurus kind of showing us like it doesn't need to be earthbound, or like it can be wherever you are. Like the technology can be where your place is. And so I like that a lot. Perhaps there is, it feels like perhaps there's consequences. I have to choose one over the other. And yet you're finding this, this very Aquarian sort of third option of what if I can sever this, but take it with me. And then I can decide where I need to go. And maybe that is some of that creative scorpionic thinking that we can get into, and what Uranus wants to reveal to us a week later. Because certainly that square to Saturn may feel like I can't hold this in any longer, but perhaps there will be consequences if I let this go. And I'm afraid of those consequences. And that's the word that came to mind when you were describing that. And absolutely, Saturn's not in Capricorn anymore. It's not tangible. It doesn't need to be this physical thing that you preserve. And so, yeah, perhaps this coming back to the body, recognizing where there is a sense of urgency that's conflicting with a set of external consequences. Perhaps there's tuning back into that body space and using that time to, I don't want to say like create a third option the way that I said before, but to listen to those instincts and to intuit perhaps a route that isn't visible in the immediate, or that didn't appear as an option previously. And maybe that's where Mars has that catharsis of like, I'm cutting myself free. But I figured out how to do it on my own terms. I figured out how to do it and have kind of all of what I want, or at least the important components of what I feel is consequential at this time, because it's not really ever about having it all, but it is about deciding what's important. And that's absolutely what Saturn's asking us, is like, okay, well, you want these things, and I totally get that. What from this can we tangibly take away, or can we decide is worth it, or is what we are choosing to put our energy into moving forward, since we're talking about sustainability and coming out of a time of hyper productivity and really recognizing that we have limited energy, right? More of that Saturn limitation, like, yeah, time, things take time, and yet there is only so much time. What are you going to do with that? How are you going to straddle both of those? And I think there is a big catalyst or catharsis this month. Anyway, there is, because Uranus is coming through. But if we're able to kind of lean into those spaces and tune into that irritation or that urgency in the body, and really understand what other information's in the body there too, which feels very hypnotic also. It's like, what else is in my body? Because I'm trying to be very conscious about this, but there's actually a wealth of information in my body, and I should understand what's in there before I move forward.
Which is interesting, because Taurus is a sign connected to the body in many ways. And then the next week, exactly a week, November 10th, and then November 17th, Mars is opposite Uranus. So Mars and Scorpio opposite Uranus and Taurus. And again, these dates, It's like really, it's just the whole month is actually these themes. And the dates is like when it's the exact square, but that whole week, Mars is square Saturn and opposite Uranus.
Yeah.
And really the whole month. It's just like, so remembering that the dates that we're giving are just these kind of like focal points so that we can communicate about it. But really the themes are present, but you might feel the shift more at this time to Mars opposite Uranus, and maybe not might, you probably will. But so November 17th, Mars is opposite Uranus, and that feels like the sudden release, which would be like we made it to the toilet, and there
yes,
maybe
yes.
I don't know, but and then you have a new insight about something.
Or like I found a toilet, like then there was a toilet, like a toilet emerged out of nowhere. Yes, yes. That is a very good point, because we're not, Mars is a personal planet, but we're not talking about Mercury or even Venus, which both move so much faster than Mars. Mars is taking its sweet time. And so that's a very good thing to remember, that these are the exact dates of these transits, but really it may be the buildup to it that feels the most intense, or perhaps there's a revelation after that actually kind of ties it all together. And so, yes, being mindful of that is key. That opposition to Uranus is, I mean, thinking too about, you brought up how Mars was in Taurus at the beginning of the year, and that being a sign of its detriment as well, and meeting Uranus sort of planting within us perhaps some urgency that may be now coming to light at this time. What's been brewing in that sort of, how many months has that been? 9 months? Oh, what's been brewing in that 9-month cycle?
Ooh,
what's now Mars opposite Uranus sounds like we're going into labor. Like this is something's emerging.
That really resonates though, actually, what you're saying.
Right.
Since you
brought up Taurus being the body.
So I'm Aquarius rising, so Saturn's right on my ascendant right now. Which means Mars is going to be up by my midheaven, my Scorpio midheaven, and Uranus is down at my IC. So I'm like really getting those important points of my chart. And so
my goodness.
The way I've been feeling it is I became a dad this year because I adopted a dog, Saturn in Aquarius. And then my dog is, and he just woke up, he is Uranus in Taurus. Like entering my home. It's like suddenly it's a puppy. He's like tearing shit up. He wants to roll in the mud all day, every day. And it's distraction to me. It's obstacles for me. Saturn, sudden chaos. So that's one way I've been experiencing that tension all year. And now that Mars has entered Scorpio, my midheaven, I'm like putting myself out in the public. I'm like, Scorpio season is always a public time for me as my midheaven, but now it's like, no, you really need to take action, because I have not been focusing on my work as much this year, because I've been tending to this square of taking care of my dog and getting to build that relationship and that trust. And so my finances have kind of taken a backseat. My ambition has in some ways also, because I've been focusing more on stuff in the 4th house and at home. But I do find myself kicking things into gear at this time. And it's like, I've actually come to a breaking point of either I can't keep my dog and I have to rehouse him because it's too expensive for me and it's too much of a distraction. Like his high energy, I can't be in my astrology channel. And so what this has revealed to me during this time period is how much my personal space is important to me in order to be of service to the world. That's been Saturn and Aquarius's lesson to me. And that when I meditate for an hour, it's not just me being like cute and spiritual. I actually have to in order for me to work. And Saturn and Aquarius is like, no, these rituals you have, like even going on a walk by yourself without your dog, is part of your process. And it's making me be really clear on the structures in my life that allow me to be the Aquarian that I am. And so we hit a breaking point like the last few weeks where it's just like, how is this going to work for us? We need a routine. We need to be more disciplined, Saturn, because of all of this Uranian energy. It's been exciting to have something new in my life, but also at the same time, we need to make this work. And so Mars entering Scorpio feels like a time for me where we're starting a training program. I'm
Hey.
putting myself out more in the public. And it's just, there's a shifting moment where it's either like, I have to burn this all to the ground, Mars and Scorpio, or I need to like pick it up and like actually like do something with it and create with it. And yeah, so it's all happening, and it's a little scary because it's new. And so all of us are going through this breakthrough this year with this Mars, with this Saturn Uranus square. And so it's like the shackles of our old self are just like cracking off, and it might feel painful. And I do think Mars opposite Uranus is going to start revealing the ways in which we have transformed this year, and the ways in which that old version of yourself before 2021 is dead. It's gone.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Is it gone yet? Is it over? Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yes, absolutely. That's very true. And that, Uranus in Taurus, coming back to Venus just briefly, thinking about that retrograde, also connecting with that Uranus in Taurus and sort of bringing us back to that, needing to make space for that, whatever that Uranus is bringing up for us, moving forward with that Venus retrograde. But I love that. Yes. So there is really this sort of push of labor. Like it has to happen. Like either we're just shutting it all down and it's been for nothing, or we're pushing through this. Like we're doing it.
Yeah.
But we can't sit here anymore. We can't sit here and be trapped in this frustration any longer. Like I can't stand for it. Like it's just not the way. It's just not going to happen. Absolutely. And I do love thinking about, we have all transformed in some way. And that connects probably too with the Pluto return as well, and like Venus stationing on Pluto. But that sense of like, none of us is leaving 2021 the same person that we walked into it. And we didn't, that was the same for 2020 as well, but there was still so much we were underneath, I think, in 2020 that it was still too nebulous. Here we are though, and we are in many ways on the other side of something, not through it necessarily, but on the other side of something, or approaching that breakthrough point, I think. And I think you're absolutely right that becomes this breaking point of, am I this or not? Am I ready? Am I breaking out of this chrysalis? Am I the butterfly now? Or do I just die in here? Yeah. And
it's all illuminated. November 19th, it's eclipse season. We have the partial lunar eclipse in Taurus to end Scorpio season. And then things shift into Sagittarius, which is also there with the nodal axis, and we'll have the Sagittarius New Moon eclipse in December.
Woo!
So everything, all that tension building, and then like the breakthrough of like, it's either all for nothing, or we're gonna break through and do this and like really like grit and like hunker down and like go in and like make it happen. It does feel like for me, that's how I've been experiencing it. And so the full moon in Taurus, the reason why it's a partial lunar eclipse is because it's within just a few degrees of the nodal axis. And so the nodal axis is the eclipse axis. So even though the North Node is still in Gemini, this full moon is at the 27th degree of Taurus. And the North Node will be, I believe, at the second degree of Gemini. So it's within an orb. And so we get this partial lunar eclipse. And so it's foreshadowing for what this North Node in Taurus might bring us. And the North Node, again, in my own practices, the ways in which we are evolving towards, and there is an invitation to upgrade that part of our chart. And so over the last year and a half, Gemini in our chart has gotten some upgrades and realizations around it. And wow, the North Node in Gemini has been a lot. So it has taught me a lot. I think of, TikTok feels very Gemini, that's been a part of the North Node in Gemini. But that's maybe more of like December transits anyway, of like talking about the North Node in Gemini. But what is this shift into North Node in Taurus bringing us? And what is this full moon in Taurus on November 19th bringing us? Yeah.
This partial lunar eclipse feels so fascinating. And I'm I'm just gonna keep talking about the Pluto return until it happens. Because it feels
We
so
get
significant.
3 of them, actually.
Right.
Yeah, and like
Yes.
boom, boom, boom. Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun year. We just have so many fun years this decade. It's great.
Yeah.
Saturn Uranus squares and then some exact Pluto returns. It's great.
The 20s.
Yes, fantastic stuff. But it does feel significant that the nodes are shifting into these signs as Pluto is returning in America, this very scorpionic Pluto time for us. And I think it's interesting too that a lot of our just fun fact, a lot of our current politicians have a lot of Taurus and Scorpio placements. Biden is a super Scorpio. And yeah, and like I think Pelosi has like a Taurus moon. A lot of these sort of the older generation in power has a lot of placements on this axis. And I think it's going to be very interesting that the US Pluto return is happening at the same time as the South Node is passing through Scorpio, also over our generational Pluto as well.
Biden's a Taurus moon, right? Scorpio Sun Taurus moon, I believe.
I think so. Yeah. So there's some interesting stuff to be revealed. So I definitely think that, you know, we've talked about this month being sort of this birth excretion catharsis or catalyst, some sort of emergence occurring, some sort of stance becoming real for us, or some identity becoming solidified. And so it makes a lot of sense to me that we would feel this sense of, again, like catharsis, or have this catalyst occur right before we get this first taste of what's going to be revealed to us next year. And you pointing out that the Mercury retrogrades will shift into Earth signs, and us really, you know, that's going to have the North Node hitting Uranus, right? So really showing us like innovations towards how we treat our land and how we treat our bodies and how we're using our resources and what values we're sharing. And so it makes sense that we would have a taste of this now, because we are emerging as new people. We are not who we entered this year as, and it's important for us to have that kind of moment of inventory of what am I shedding? What am I stepping out of? And if anything, it might feel kind of, I don't know what the word I want is, but it might feel exciting. I'll go with that. To have that reveal. Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. To have that reveal, because we felt so stuck for the past 2 years, and because next year is where things, you know, things are starting to move, and next year things are starting to unfold. And so it may be this very radical time, this very like revealing, you know, just a partial eclipse, but still, but we may see perhaps foresight into what it is we're entering into next year, maybe clarity about what we're stepping out of, and how that's empowering us in this time, and getting a sense of, again, focusing on those earth signs, and what is our connection to the tangible. What are we moving, what are we shifting into? How are our relationships to tangible changing, and what do they mean to me?
I was telling you I have a Taurus IC. And so it's been really interesting. So I just suddenly last month found out I had a 30-day notice to move out of my apartment. And I was like, okay, we're doing this. And I was interested, you know, because Saturn's in Aquarius. I'm like, well, maybe I want to live in community. I've been living alone. And so I found this queer house that I thought was really cool. And I got to know them. I liked them. They're elders too, which felt really cool. But at the end of our conversation, the house was beautiful. It's like 3 floors. There's a yoga room on the top floor. And at the end of our conversation, they're like, but there's one thing. You need to meet Earth Flame, who lives in the basement. And I was like, who is Earth Flame? And so it's this roommate that I needed to meet. They're like, he's a little like radical. And like, so you just need to meet Earth Flame that lives in the basement. And immediately my mind went to Uranus and Taurus, Earth Flame. I see in the basement. And I was like, that is not how Uranus and Taurus is going to manifest for me. I need to be my own earth flame in the basement. And so instead I found this place that's very affordable that happens to have a basement. And that's where I am now. Uranus doing astrology in my basement. So now I'm earth flame in the basement. And I just wanted to share that because like these things can show up in very literal ways in our life. And so for this Taurus full moon, I feel myself, it's the first full moon in this eclipse, and I feel eclipse. I'm like, oh, I'm in my basement with an astrology studio now. How did that happen suddenly? And here I am. And so on this full moon, hopefully I will like be buying like mini fridge that I can stock with kombucha down here, and maybe like a couch. Like, you know, Taurus is the earthly realm. So maybe we are like getting to know how we are connecting to the earth in a new way. And that would be my ideal, just putting out there full moon, but you know, I have to make the money in order to make those things happen. So Taurus is also going to bring up what our relationship is to the financial realms and how we are innovating to create a life that feels, as you were saying, beautiful and comfortable for us. And I'm looking at your beautiful space too, and thinking about your Mars and Taurus that is kind of ruling over your Vesta and Aries in the fourth house. So you have like a similar thing going on in your house and home, and Uranus is likely in your fourth house right now too. And you're in your home doing astrology. We both have this Uranian energy there. So just some thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love that. As soon as you said earth flame in the basement, I love when our astrology like shows up in our real lives. We're like, yeah, that's very real. I love that you are your own earth flame in the basement. Yeah, absolutely. Our relationship to our resources is absolutely connected to our relationship to our finances. And I'm thinking too about how the North Node has been passing over our Chiron, right? We have Chiron in Gemini. And so there's been so much learning there about trusting our own minds and understanding how we absorb information and listening to our instincts. And I'm very interested to see the North Node sort of ping the Chiron and Taurus generation and sort of start revealing what sort of healing starts happening there and how that begins to kind of show up in the tangible, since that's such a tangible, you know, you and I were like, yeah, we're communicating, and like, yes, Gemini. And it's absolutely like, yes, our worlds really exist in the digital realm, and this is how we connect. And it's very healing to feel at home in these spaces. And so it's exciting to think about the Chiron and Taurus group having a similar experience, but that translating in a very tangible way and seeing what sort of earthly things begin growing from this experience, and seeing what sort of, I believe, solutions. I feel like solutions will start to grow from this group of people towards how we should treat land, or how we can, or what more communal living. We're seeing a lot of communal living coming up, right? And you mentioned that too, and that's absolutely something important. And so thinking about what our communities, you said, I want to live with elders. Like, I want that to Chiron and Taurus group to create a commune so I can go live with them and learn from them. They're not even much older than me, but they are older than me. And they know things. But yes, money being connected to tangible resources, and also connecting to privacy in that Scorpio realm. What is privacy, and how do we abuse the land to have privacy, and what sort of ways can we build something that affords us both?
Yeah, well, also honoring, like when I think of the Scorpio South Node, honoring the spirits of the land too. Like when you're talking about honoring the earth, there is that South Node in Scorpio also is, Scorpio season always brings more attention to me of the natives of the land. And absolutely. As I'm building in this basement, being earth flame in the basement, am I also acknowledging the original caretakers of this land? And that's important as I'm like, I'm gonna make a couch and like have like kombucha, like refrigerator, you know, like
my mini fridge.
Yeah, it's like, okay, Taurus, but like also, are you honoring the pain and the grief of this land too. And that, again, having the South Node in Scorpio as we're heading towards the Pluto return of the United States is like, that is looming around us.
Right.
And so it is being mindful about, what we are purchasing, or as you were saying, taking inventory, Taurus, around what it is that we're releasing, so that we can be stewards of the land. And also as we continue as the Pluto and Scorpio generation, which both of us are, how are we, taking responsibility for the ways in which there has been a lot of harm.
Absolutely.
And that will be different for everyone. And so it's deep intergenerational healing.
Yes, definitely.
And, for me, as someone who is white, cisgendered male, even though I'm gay, like there's a lot that I'm facing and realizing at this time. And I don't even necessarily have all the words for it. You would think North Node and Gemini would give me all the words for it. But for me, I loved hearing what you said about Chiron and Gemini, because for me, it has been, it's been so painful for me in like actual relationships. Like I'm thinking like my brother, because I think of Gemini as like siblings, and like seeing that my brother is like a Trump supporter, and it's like completely divided us, so just some thoughts. I need to like collect them more, but I think that is shifting us into Sagittarius season, because we're coming to that culmination of that access of the North Node and Gemini and the South Node in Sagittarius.
Yeah, definitely.
And so November 21st, the Sun enters Sag.
And then pretty much hits the South Node right away, right? At that point?
Yep.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So and that will be, the last time the Sun crosses over the South Node in Sag.
Absolutely. And then Mercury will follow up and do the same. Yeah. I mean, I think it's fun. I love that you don't have the words yet. We still have the North Node in Gemini. We're still wrapping up those lessons. Absolutely. And I think it's great to even just be in this place of starting to find some words, and that is part of that inventory too. I feel like inventory is never really complete. We're always changing. We're always growing. That's very Gemini. So as we're kind of experiencing this partial eclipse and starting to get a taste of the Taurus influence coming in while wrapping up these Gemini lessons, I think it's good even to just be comfortable with having a partial list. Maybe that's part of that, part of what we're going to be learning in the retrogrades and the earth signs. Because what you were saying about, you were making fun of yourself and your kombucha, and it's good to have humor about what we like and what we feel like we need, but we are really trapped in a cycle of not having enough of certain resources, but then being conditioned to spend what we have on resources that may be excessive or maybe something that's ill-fitted for us. And I feel like there's so much to learn for us about finding that middle ground, because of course we are unique people. We need unique things. We need our space to take care of us and to support our individual needs, but we also need to make sure that there's enough for everyone. And so part of that inventory may be recognizing, I thought I needed this before and I don't anymore. And so I no longer need to give myself to that thing or invest in that thing. And that frees me up to have this other thing that I now as this new person do need. And I think there's so much attachment to like so much psychological attachment to what we feel called to invest in or to buy. We are we make impulsive choices and we tend to spend in condition with our burnout. So it's like we're pushed to burnout so that we have to kind of make up for it. And so I feel like there's a big equilibrium that we're trying to kind of reach, where your mini fridge is necessary. Like you need those, that you need these things to do the thing that you like you need your kombucha, man. Like absolutely. I need my big stupid water bottle. Like it's fine. I don't drink water and I have ADHD. And if I don't have this stupid water bottle in front of me, I'm never gonna drink water. So there's a lot, I think, of shame in consumerism, but to consume is a human need. We need to consume. We are humans. The earth is meant to be consumed. So we're in this battle of, I think, a lot of subconscious material, and how it guides us to engage with the tangible world and with our physical resources. And as we become more in tune with what that subconscious, perhaps early programming is, and seeing how that shows up in our relationship to the tangible realm, understanding, okay, I'm ready to, I don't need that anymore, or I can give this back to the earth, or I can make sure that someone else gets this because I no longer need it. And hopefully we can kind of shift out of this like resource hoarding mentality, and instead just get very clear on perhaps the things that do enhance our lives. Like, I just have my red curtains now, and now I'm very happy. I paid $7 for some fabric. Like now it's on the wall and it's great.
Yes.
And so becoming more resourceful, while also maybe forgiving ourselves for being part of the system that we're part of, because it's not, we didn't ask to be born, but we didn't make this system, but we are part of it, and we do have to survive it. And we have had to do things to do that. And so I feel like there's some of that in that release is understanding, again, that we have transformed, that we have the power to transform, that we're always transforming, and that we can adjust what we need as we go. And that's okay. We're still stable. We can still feel stable and grounded through change. Oh, that's fun. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
I do. I'm resonating with everything you're saying. It's interesting that, all this is coming up around this Taurus full moon, and then we shift into Sagittarius season, Mercury entering Sagittarius season. We're still in eclipse season. And, Sagittarius can be a time of year where we are indulging a little bit more too. So along these themes of like, I'm going to get my mini fridge and have my kombucha, and it's Sagittarius season. I'm going to enjoy it. Is that sort of vibe for Sag for me?
Totally.
And maybe it won't be mini, maybe it'll be like a huge fridge. I don't know. But maybe I have a new vision of, I'm going to get sponsored by this kombucha company. Sagittarius is going to bring in some new ideas too.
Yes. Absolutely. Especially at the hitting the south node at the end and showing us what we've learned at this point. Yeah.
And then Mercury, it's interesting, Mercury into Sagittarius, which Gemini North Node will be looking to Mercury in Sagittarius and its final few degrees of North Node in Gemini. This is shifting us into what this nodal axis has taught us. And on the most basic level, we've not been traveling the world, Sagittarius. We've been releasing that. The South Node's gone through Sag, and we've been asked to, maybe like go on a bike ride, North Node and Gemini. Like that is like the basic way that I have felt that. I've been noticing my friends getting into roller skating and, them posting it on TikTok and like dancing as twins. Like that's been the North Node and Gemini in a very like playful way. But getting to know your neighborhood in a new way. And so as the South Node is finishing up Sagittarius, maybe we will see things shift in the ways that we are interacting with the world at large. Because anyone that's come to me for reading over the last year and a half, I'm like, no, like now's not the time actually to travel the world.
Right.
So those with a lot of Sagittarian energy have been, though Sagittarius has not been expressed as easily, and it could have been pulling us into some of the shadow of Sagittarius even, which, is ignorance and the belief that what you believe is true and that no one else's beliefs are true. I felt South Node and Sag with, people who are like anti-maskers, and, Sagittarius in its shadow is kind of like the witch burner. And there's just been that kind of like fire, and it will be interesting to see if as it enters Scorpio, how that starts to shift. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think that's very interesting. And another perspective on that Sag energy is that same, you highlighted the sort of, we're getting to know our neighborhood in a new way, and we're also sort of unsure of each other in these spaces. And I think we've seen that Sagittarius South Node come through in a lot of the cultural discussions that we've had over the past year and a half. We're talking about, at the beginning of quarantine, the Black Lives Matter protests happening, and in the throes of the pandemic, the anti-Asian movement that is happening. And I think we're maybe recognizing the fact that as our, coming back to America and our Pluto return, but thinking about how we kind of we showcase that we were a melting pot. We showcase that you could come here and just there's room for everyone here. And then you get here, and actually that's not the real story. And so we're kind of having to reframe how we make space for other, as you talked about, like what I know is real. And that's absolutely showing up across cultures as well, where it's like the way we do things is right and the way you do things is wrong. And whole groups of people can't be in this neighborhood because there's hate crimes just happening. And that's like just this, we're not embracing, we're not world traveling, and we're also not thinking about the rest of the world. We're not able to really contextualize what other people are going through because perhaps the trauma that we're experiencing in our local spaces is so engrossing that it's easy for us to turn on each other, or we've been invited to turn on each other, I think. And so hopefully, I'm curious to see, and I'm hopeful that as these nodes shift, we're actually able to create more space for these perspectives, especially as they pertain to land, because a lot of cultures have a better relationship to tangible resources than some of our more modern societies and cultures.
Definitely. It was interesting. I look back at my journal from like when the North Node was in Sagittarius, and that was like back in 2011, and it was so like spiritual and like chakra system, and I was like exploring all of these practices from other parts of the world. And like that was when I really started my yoga practice, and I was really into manifestation and like synchronicities, and like it was just like really magical, like everything that I had written. And then when I look at my journal for North Node in Gemini, it has been for me a lot more about me getting to understand what it means to live here in the United States and get to know my immediate surroundings. And it's been a lot more about me acknowledging my own inherent racism and thinking about duality. And so the North Node in Gemini, it's been much more critical. And like, even like when we're having conversations with people, there's a sense of, like even like cancel culture and things like that have been coming up, where it's just like, I'm having to like think before I speak. Whereas when the North Node was in Sag, I was like everything is spiritual and magical and we're all one, like it was such a different time. And I also acknowledge that I was in my 20s and it was before my Saturn return and like things like that. But I have not been connecting to even my practices that I have learned from other cultures during this time, because I'm sitting with the ways in which I might be appropriating that culture. Which North Node in Gemini has brought into my awareness. And
absolutely. It was, I didn't really realize until you just said that, but it was over the course of this year and a half that I stopped kind of publicly offering Reiki. I just sort of felt like, and no one said anything to me. No one was like, I hate you, like no one came for me. But I felt something shift. It didn't feel necessarily like it was mine, and perhaps that came directly after studying hypnosis, which has so many origin points that it's not culturally specific. And it's been utilized across so many different cultures that it's really just sort of a concept that we all can use in modern ways now. But moving through that and understanding that I was studying something that didn't come with any sort of cultural appropriative anything. Kind of helped me understand, I think, more about, I don't know, I studying Reiki was absolutely a fantastic thing for me to do, and it came at a time that I really needed it, and it absolutely was something fruitful to use with clients. So I never had a negative experience, but it just something shifted, and I don't think I really understood it until you just described that. But and that's not to say that other people practicing Reiki are being bad. But for me, for whatever reason, it didn't necessarily feel right. And maybe that will change. Maybe I'll go back and practice that again at some point in the future. But maybe that is this North Node.
Personal. The Gemini energy it's personal air. So it is like a duality within myself, and how am I sitting with the contradictions within myself too?
Yes.
It has felt like us really looking at ourselves in the mirror, which oftentimes the Lover's card, which is Gemini's card, the modern depictions of it have taken it away from, two people like holding hands and looking up at an angel to someone looking at themselves in the mirror. And I've been really feeling that with the North Node in Gemini. And so it's interesting, the shift towards the end of November is like, we're getting a lot more intellectual here in our discussion, and it's like getting more philosophical, both Gemini and Sag, and things shift towards the end of the month. And it does feel like us kind of wrapping up the story of even like when the North Node entered Gemini, thinking back to that time period, May of 2020.
Right.
And the most obvious thing for me was the building momentum of the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests that started kicking off at that time. And so it'll be interesting to just note if there are any of those themes coming back up into the forefront. Makes me think of Sagittarius season of last year was when the vaccine started to roll out too. So that's another storyline that I've noted around this axis, which also happened in tandem with Jupiter entering Aquarius.
Right.
So it does bring our awareness to the final few degrees of Jupiter in Aquarius this Sagittarius season, and then it will enter Pisces at the end of December. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. We're getting like as this energy shifts into Sag, it does I'm like, let's talk about December, and Sagittarius is kind of like wants to take us into the future, but November kind of ends with us looking towards the future in a new way. And you'll have to stay tuned for December transits to learn what comes next.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that Venus retrograde will be in December.
And that exact date I have written here, just Venus enters its shadow on November 18th.
There we go.
And then stations retrograde on December 18th. So those 18th, November 18th shadow, December 18th retrograde.
Very interesting. Okay. Yeah. I really love that. It is entering Sagittarius season does bring us to this sort of reflection point that feels really natural for entering the last month of the year. And thinking, as you pointed out, Jupiter at the final degrees of Aquarius. So a lot of things do feel like they're ending. Because we'll be under Jupiter's rule as Jupiter is finishing up those degrees and then moving into Pisces. And so, there is quite a palpable shift, I think, happening with this shift into Sagittarius for sure. Yeah. It's going to be very interesting to see how we all kind of make sense of what we've lived through this year and what we've learned.
Definitely. I know around that time period, I'll likely be opening up like registration for a 6-month course that I'm going to be leading in 2022. So there's also like, who are your teachers? If you are a teacher, what are you like? How are you preparing for the new year? What are you putting out? So I'm kind of in my own personal life, that's what I'm thinking about. But
and that's the timing for me for the hearth as well, I think. Just sort of starting to open up this container that we really start to move into in the new year. So that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. Yeah. So
we've listened to music today. We've talked about holding in, going to the bathroom, sudden releases. And we've also talked about beauty and how important it is to support us, in our spaces, to allow ourselves to feel comfortable and nice. And all of these are themes for us as we are going through this radical transformation this year. And thank you so much for joining us for the November 2021 transits. I look up to you so much, and I love your offerings, and it's been such an honor to connect with you in this way.
You did not just say that you look up to me. That
I
is
do.
so silly. I feel like I look up to you. I feel very much,
Cool.
I feel very honored to be, I was telling you at the beginning, I just feel like the work that you do and the space that you hold is just so beautiful. And I called you serene earlier, so I'm going to say it again. Just this very serene Aquarian presence. And so it's delightful to get to hang out with you. And this has been such a blast.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again. Maybe we'll listen to some more of your music when Jupiter enters Pisces.
I'll make some new music and then we'll play with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, as always, for tuning into Cosmic Cousins. Again, my name is Jeff Hinshaw. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one for an astrology reading, tarot reading, or mentorship, please visit cosmiccousins.com. If you value the show and would like to support me and the Cosmic Cousins team, please visit patreon.com/cosmiccousins. Follow us on Instagram, leave a review, and share with a loved one or a friend. As always, it's an honor for us to be here with you in this way. Take sweet care, cousins, and remember, deep breaths.